I was sitting in the middle seat of a packed flight, halfway through a bag of pretzels, when I realized how pathetic the whole thing felt. 31 years old, flying home for Thanksgiving like some kid who still believes family reunions fix everything. My name's Logan, and I hadn't been back to my hometown in almost 3 years. Not because I didn't want to, but because every time I tried, something always came up. Usually in the form of my mother forgetting to tell me the date changed, or my sister Jenna planning something that only family was invited to, which apparently didn't include me. But this year felt different. Or at least, I wanted it to. I'd been working crazy hours at my tech job in Seattle and thought maybe actually showing up, would mean something. Maybe we'd laugh, eat too much pie, watch bad football, and pretend like the last few awkward years hadn't happened. So, I booked my ticket 2 weeks in advance, texted my mom the flight number, and even told her I'd pick up dessert. She texted back a thumbs up emoji. That was it. No, can't wait to see you. No, drive safe. Just a yellow thumb floating in digital silence. I should have known then. When I landed, I called her. No answer. Texted, nothing. Figured she was probably busy cooking, so I grabbed my rental car and started the hour drive from the airport. I even stopped at a bakery on the way to grab a pumpkin pie. It wasn't until I pulled into the driveway of our old house, that faded beige two-story with the cracked mailbox that still read the Carters, that I felt something was off. No cars, no lights, no smells of turkey or cinnamon or anything remotely resembling family. I rang the doorbell anyway, more out of habit than hope. No answer. I tried the handle, locked. I called again, straight to voicemail. Hey mom, it's me. I just got here. Where is everyone? My voice cracked a little, and I hated that it did. I left the pie on the porch, just in case, and drove around the block thinking maybe they'd moved and forgot to tell me. But their cars were nowhere. The whole neighborhood was quiet, the kind of stillness that hits you in the chest. I ended up sitting in a parking lot for nearly an hour, scrolling through my phone like an idiot, waiting for someone to text me back. Nobody did. Finally, I caved and called Jenna. She picked up after 2 rings. Logan, why are you calling? Her tone wasn't annoyed. Exactly. More confused, like I'd interrupted something. Because I'm at Mom's house for Thanksgiving. Where are you guys? She went quiet. I could hear voices in the background, faint laughter, clinking silverware. Oh, right. We decided to do it at my place this year. Didn't Mom tell you? No, she didn't, I said slowly. I just flew all the way here. Well, we figured you probably wouldn't come, she said. You're always busy with work and all that. I literally told Mom I was coming. Yeah, well, it's kinda late now. We already ate. That one hit harder than I expected. I could picture them all sitting around Jenna's oversized dining table. Mom, Dad, my brother Mason, maybe even a couple of cousins, laughing and talking like I never existed. You could have texted, I said. Just once. She sighed like I was being dramatic. Logan, don't make this a big thing, okay? We'll see you at Christmas. I hung up before she could say anything else. The next 2 days, not one person called. Not Mom, not Dad, not even Mason. I stayed in a cheap motel off the highway, watched reruns of shows I didn't like, and tried to convince myself it didn't matter. But it did. It really did. Because it wasn't just about being left out. It was about being forgotten. Then, on the 3rd morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. Hey, sweetie. Quick question. Jenna's baby shower is next month. It's $500 per person for the venue, catering, and decorations. You're paying, right? I just stared at the screen. No, sorry about Thanksgiving. No explanation, not even a how are you. Just a demand for money like the past few days hadn't happened. I actually laughed out loud, the kind of laugh that sounds a little unhinged. I texted back, $500? For what? A royal wedding. She replied instantly, don't start. It's your sister's special day. Everyone's contributing. Family supports family, Logan. That phrase, family supports family, was her favorite line, the same one she used when I was younger and she borrowed from my savings for Mason's first car, or when she guilt me into covering their mortgage 1 month, until Dad's bonus came through. I used to think it meant something deep about loyalty. Now, it just felt like code for we take, you give. So, I opened my banking app, sent her exactly 50 cents, and added a note, good luck. 2 hours later, my phone blew up. First a call from Mom, then Jenna, then a group text titled Family Red Heart. The messages came flying in. Are you serious right now? Don't be petty, Logan. Mom's crying. You're so ungrateful. I didn't reply to any of them. I just muted the chat and went for a walk. That night, around 11 p.m., I got an email from my bank. Someone had tried to access the joint account I used to share with Mom years ago, the one I'd left open for emergencies. My stomach turned. When I logged in, I saw pending transfers, small amounts at first, but clearly testing the waters. Then another notification popped up. Mason had tried to use the shared family card for a $700 baby shower deposit. That's when something in me snapped. Years of being overlooked, used, and treated like a walking ATM hit all at once. I sat there, staring at the screen, and started closing every shared account. The old savings, the family card, even the streaming services I'd been paying for since college. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. Cold, calm, overdue clarity. By the time I was done, the only thing left connected to them was my phone number, and even that felt temporary. I shut my laptop, turned off my phone, and slept better than I had in months. The next morning, I woke up to pounding on my door. Not a knock, pounding. Logan, open the door right now. It was Mason. His voice was muffled but furious. I know you're in there. I froze. He wasn't supposed to even know where I was staying. Then I remembered. I'd left my location on in the family group chat before muting it. He pounded again, harder this time. You think you can just cut us off like that? You owe us an explanation. I took a slow breath, heart racing. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just a family argument anymore. It was about control, and I'd just taken it away from them. That was the moment everything shifted. I didn't open the door right away. I just stood there, barefoot on the cold motel carpet, staring at it like it might start talking back. Mason's voice was sharp, the kind of anger that comes from entitlement, not hurt. He wasn't mad that I'd shut him out. He was mad that I'd finally stopped letting him in for free. Logan, he barked again, followed by a thud so loud the cheap wall art rattled. I know you hear me. I finally cracked the door open a few inches, just enough to see him. Same face, same smug grin I'd grown up with. Except now he looked tired, maybe desperate. You shouldn't be here, I said. Yeah, well, Mom's freaking out. You froze her card. She couldn't even pay for gas last night. What's your problem? My problem. I repeated, half laughing. You mean my money, Mason? You guys have been using my accounts like they're family property. Because they are, he snapped. You've always said you'd help if anyone needed it. Mom counted on that. Now suddenly you're some big shot who's too good for his own family. I opened the door fully and crossed my arms. I'm the one who's been paying for everyone else's emergencies since I was 21. How many times has anyone paid me back? He frowned. That's not the point. Yeah, I said quietly. It never is when you're the one taking. He glared at me, shifting his weight like he wanted to say more, but didn't know how. You humiliated Mom with that 50-cent thing. She cried all night. Jenna was the one who called me. She's pregnant, by the way. Maybe show some respect. I know she's pregnant. And if you think I'm paying $500 for a baby shower I wasn't even invited to, you've lost it. Mason's face twisted. You don't understand what Mom's going through. She's stressed. Dad's been quiet lately. Jenna's hormonal. And you? And me what? Working? Paying my own bills? Not begging people for money. He exhaled hard. You've always thought you were better than the rest of us. That one stung. Not because it was true, but because that's how they always saw me. Not as someone who worked hard, but as someone who thought he was above them for doing it. When he finally left, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the door again. My hands were shaking. I wasn't angry so much as numb, like I'd hit a wall I'd been running toward for years without realizing it. I remembered being 17, getting my first job at a grocery store, saving every dollar because Mom had said, "We're all struggling right now, Logan, but once things get better, we'll pay you back." I believed her. I always believed her. And somehow, 20 years later, nothing had changed, except now I was the one keeping the whole show running. Later that afternoon, I drove back to town for some air. It was cold, gray, that weird November mix of half rain, half snow. My phone started buzzing again, Mom this time. I let it go to voicemail. Then another text came in. You've really disappointed me, Logan. Family doesn't turn on each other like this. I almost laughed. Family doesn't turn on each other. Unless, apparently, it's convenient. I didn't answer. But a few hours later, when I stopped at a coffee shop, I saw Jenna had posted something on Facebook. A picture of her holding her baby bump, surrounded by pastel balloons and cupcakes. The caption read, "Can't wait for my special day. Two Hearts family means everything. Hashtag blessed, hashtag grateful." And right below it, a comment from Mom. "So proud of my beautiful daughter. You deserve the world." Some people forget where they came from. That line, that last one, it was aimed straight at me, and she knew it. The thing about family manipulation is it's rarely loud. It's quiet, passive-aggressive, sugar-coated with phrases like, "We love you," but, or "You've changed." My mom had perfected it years ago. She'd guilt you with a smile, make you feel like doing what's right was somehow cruel. I tried calling Dad that night, hoping maybe he'd see things differently. He picked up after a few rings, his voice tired. "Hey, son." "Hey, Dad. Look, I'm trying to understand what's going on here. Why is everyone acting like I committed a crime for not paying for Jenna's party?" He sighed. "You know how your mom is. She just wants everything perfect for your sister. It's her first baby, after all. And what about Thanksgiving? Nobody even told me it wasn't at the house." There was a pause. That was a miscommunication." "Miscommunication?" I said, voice tightening. "I sat outside an empty house for an hour, Dad. Nobody even texted me." "I told your mother to call you," he said softly. "So it's my fault again?" "No, I didn't say that." I could tell he was tired, not physically, but emotionally. My dad had been beaten down by years of keeping the peace. He was a quiet man who believed avoiding conflict was the same as resolving it. It wasn't. It just let people like my mom and Jenna run the show. "Dad," I said finally, "I can't keep doing this. Every time I help, it turns into more. And when I stop, I'm the villain." He didn't answer for a few seconds. "Just talk to your mother, okay? She loves you." That was the end of it. I hung up feeling like I'd just been told to apologize for existing. The next morning, Mom texted again. "We're coming over to talk this out." I didn't respond, but 3 hours later, there was a knock, softer than Mason's, but somehow heavier. When I opened the door, there she was. Same neat hair, same perfume she'd worn since I was a kid. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi, sweetheart." "Mom," I said flatly. "Can we come in?" She glanced over her shoulder. Jenna was behind her, bundled up in a white coat, one hand resting dramatically on her belly. I hesitated, but stepped aside. The moment they were inside, Mom started scanning the motel room like it was beneath her. "You're still staying here? I thought you'd go to a nicer place." "I'm not here for vacation." She set her purse down and folded her arms. "Logan, this has gone too far. I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but you can't just cut off the family like that." "Mom, I didn't cut anyone off. I stopped being used." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. You act like we're all stealing from you." "You are stealing from me," I said. "The accounts were supposed to be for emergencies. Not baby showers. Not gas money. Not fancy restaurants." Mom's smile faltered. "We're family. Family shares." "Then why didn't family share Thanksgiving with me?" That shut her up. For a moment. Then she said quietly, "You know how your sister gets when she's planning things. It wasn't personal. It always is." Jenna scoffed. "You're just mad you weren't the center of attention for once." That one hit hard. "You think this is about attention? I'm just tired of being the only one who gives anything in this family." Mom's eyes hardened. "Logan, you've always been dramatic. You make everything about money. Do you even realize how cold that makes you sound?" Cold. That word stuck to me like tar. I'd spent years helping them out, covering bills, buying gifts, sending money, and somehow, when I stopped, I was the cold one. "Mom," I said, voice low, "I flew across the country to see you. You couldn't even text me where dinner was. That's not an accident. That's a message." She looked away. "You're twisting things." "No," I said, stepping closer. "I'm finally seeing things clearly." For a second, something flickered in her expression. Guilt, maybe, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You always overthink everything. Just send the money, and we'll forget this happened." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "You really think that's how this works?" "Don't be cruel, Logan," she said. "Your sister's been through enough." I turned to Jenna. "You could have called. You could have told me about Thanksgiving. You could have invited me to your baby shower like a normal person. But instead, I get a bill." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't think you'd care. You never come home anyway. Maybe because every time I do, it feels like I'm not wanted." Mom snapped her purse shut and stood up. "Fine. If that's how you feel, then I don't know what else to say. But remember this, Logan, family always comes first. Always. She said it like a threat. Then she walked out, Jenna trailing behind her. The silence that followed felt heavy. I could hear the distant hum of traffic outside, the soft creak of the motel heater kicking on. My chest felt hollow. I thought that was the end of it, that they'd storm off and leave me alone. But that night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my childhood home, lights blazing inside, with the caption, "You'll regret what you did today." I stared at it for a long time, the glow from my phone reflecting off the window. And for the first time, I realized they weren't just angry. They were planning something. Something big. The text didn't come from a random number. Not really. I zoomed in on the photo, and though the number was unsaved, something about the angle, the porch light's reflection, and the timestamp made my stomach drop. Only one person still had that angle from their driveway camera. Mason. At first, I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe it was some weird attempt to guilt trip me. But deep down, I knew my family didn't send idle messages. Every word, every post, every guilt-soaked text had an intent to pull me back in. And this time, something about "you'll regret what you did today" didn't sound like guilt. It sounded like a warning. I barely slept that night. I sat upright in bed, lights on, staring at my phone. A part of me hoped I'd wake up and realize it was all some exaggerated misunderstanding, that maybe they'd cool off, that this wouldn't turn into something uglier. But when morning came, I woke to a notification that made my heart drop straight through the mattress. My bank had locked my account. I sat there blinking, reloading the screen over and over. "Your access is temporarily restricted due to suspicious activity." I grabbed my laptop, tried logging in from there, and got the same message. My checking, savings, business account, everything. Even my secondary card. I called the bank. After 20 minutes on hold, a representative came on. "Yes, Mr. Carter, we flagged your account due to multiple failed password attempts from different devices. One of them was from your hometown." I froze. "What? I didn't log in from there." "That's what we figured," she said. "Luckily, none of the attempts succeeded, but we locked access just in case. We'll need you to come in with identification to restore access." I thanked her, hung up, and just sat there, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. There was no way that was a coincidence. Someone had tried to get into my accounts, and it had to be family. I could almost see them in my head, sitting around the kitchen table, plotting like it was a family project. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. Because no matter how toxic they'd been, a part of me still believed there were lines they wouldn't cross. I was wrong. An hour later, my phone started buzzing again. This time it was Dad. "Logan," he said when I picked up, his tone quiet but sharp. "What's going on with the accounts?" I almost laughed. "You too. Your mother said her card stopped working. She was at the grocery store, and..." "Because it's my card, Dad. It was never hers." He sighed. "You could have told us before shutting everything down. Would it have changed anything?" A long silence followed. Then he said, softer now, "You know your mother doesn't mean to hurt you. She just doesn't always think. Dad, she planned Thanksgiving without me. She texted me asking for $500 2 days later. Then someone tried to break into my accounts from her house. That's not thoughtlessness. That's intentional." I heard something rustle in the background. Mom's voice, faint but distinct. "Give me the phone." "No," Dad said quietly. Then I heard her shout, "Logan, we just wanted what's fair. You owe this family for everything we did for you growing up." There it was again. That word. "Oh." I took a deep breath. "You think I owe you because you were my parents? You wouldn't be where you are without us," she said sharply. "You never help out. You act like you're above everyone. And now you're turning your back when we need you most." "When you need me most," I corrected. "You're twisting everything as usual." "Mom, did you try to log into my accounts?" Silence. "Mom," she finally said, in that voice she used when she thought she was being calm and reasonable, "we just needed to check something. You've got money sitting there doing nothing while your sister's struggling. We thought." I actually dropped the phone. Not from shock, from the surge of anger that made my hand shake. I picked it back up slowly. "You thought you could just take it?" "Don't be dramatic," she said, her voice rising. "It's not stealing when it's family." "Yeah," I said, almost whispering, "it is." I hung up before she could respond. I didn't want to hear the justifications, the fake apologies, the tone shifts that always made me second-guess myself. I'd been manipulated enough times to recognize the pattern: guilt, deflection, affection, attack. repeat. But this time, the guilt didn't work. It was gone. That evening, I drove back toward my childhood neighborhood, not because I wanted to see them, but because I needed to see the house one more time. Needed to remind myself why I'd built my own life far away from it. The street looked the same, but the feeling was different. When I slowed past the house, the lights were blazing. Through the living room window, I could see movement. Mom pacing, Jenna on the couch, Mason standing near the fireplace. A family meeting, probably about me. I parked a few houses down and watched for a minute, just long enough to see Mom pick up her phone and hold it to her ear. Seconds later, my phone buzzed. I didn't answer. She called again. Then Jenna texted, "You're being ridiculous. We're family. Come talk like an adult." The same family that didn't bother inviting me to Thanksgiving now wanted to talk. I left. That night, I checked my email before bed and found something that almost made me laugh out loud, though it wasn't funny. An invoice from a local event company. Carter family baby shower deposit. Remaining balance, $3,200. At the bottom, under bill to, was my name. They'd actually put it in my name. I called the company first thing in the morning. A polite woman answered. "Hi, this is Logan Carter," I said. "I got an invoice for a baby shower I didn't book." "Oh yes, that's for Jenna Carter's event," she said cheerfully. "Your mother gave us your details. She said you'd be covering the payment." I gripped the phone so tightly it hurt. "Did she sign anything?" "Yes. She filled out the form and wrote your name in the payment section. Since the card didn't go through, we sent the invoice to you." I closed my eyes. My own mother had committed fraud, family fraud, I guess. "Thank you," I said stiffly. "You'll want to cancel that contract immediately." "Oh, we can't cancel without the client's consent." "I'm the client," I said sharply. "Not her. And if you process that payment, you'll be hearing from my lawyer." That got her attention. She promised to pause everything until further clarification. By then, I wasn't even angry, just exhausted. I'd reached that quiet stage of betrayal where the emotion burns out and what's left is clarity. And clarity hurt worse. Because for the first time, I realized it wasn't just about money. It was about control. My mom had always wanted to remind me that no matter how successful I became, she could still pull strings, still make me small, still make me need her. I thought about all the years she'd played the same games, how she'd cry when I said no, how she'd guilt me with lines like, "You're not the same sweet boy who used to share everything with his sister," or how she'd brag about me to her friends, then mock me behind my back for thinking I'm smarter than everyone. But using my name on a financial document? That crossed a line so deep it might as well have been carved in stone. I forwarded the invoice to my attorney. Not because I wanted to sue my family. I wasn't even sure I had the stomach for that yet. But because I wanted documentation. Proof. 2 days passed. I didn't answer any of their calls. Then, on the third day, Mason showed up again. This time not at the motel, but at my apartment complex in Seattle. He must have used the address I'd left on an old form for Dad. When I saw him through the peephole, my chest tightened. He looked rough, eyes bloodshot, jaw tense, wearing that same worn-out leather jacket he always thought made him look tougher than he was. He started banging on the door. "Open up, Logan. We need to talk." I didn't move. "I know about the baby shower thing," he shouted. "You didn't have to make it legal, man. You're gonna ruin everything." I stayed quiet. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. "You think you're safe? You don't even know what Mom's planning." That got me to unlock the door, just enough to look him in the eye. "What's that supposed to mean?" He hesitated, eyes darting. "She's talking to a lawyer. Something about the house. About repayment." "Repayment?" I repeated. "Yeah. She said you owe the family for what Dad gave you for college. She wants to take you to small claims or something." I told her it's crazy, but she's serious. I just stood there, speechless. Mason rubbed his face. "Look, I didn't come here to fight. You made her mad, Logan. Real mad. And when Mom's mad, she doesn't stop until she wins." He turned to leave, but before he did, he added, "You might want to check your credit, bro." The door shut, and for a long moment, all I could hear was my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I pulled out my laptop, logged into my credit account, and there it was, 2 new inquiries. One for a department store card, one for a personal loan application, both under my name, both filed within the last 48 hours, and both from my hometown. That was the exact moment I stopped seeing this as family drama and started seeing it as war. For the next few days, I moved through life like a ghost. Everything looked normal on the surface. Same morning coffee, same work emails, same quiet walks around the block. But inside, it felt like something fundamental had cracked. It wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't even sadness. It was this dull, aching clarity that came from finally seeing people for who they really were. When I checked my credit again that night, there were 3 more applications. 1 denied, 2 still pending. It was like watching termites eat through a foundation I'd spent my whole adult life building. I called the credit bureau, froze everything, and spent nearly an hour confirming I hadn't applied for anything. Then I called my lawyer, Adam, a friend from college who handled corporate cases but owed me a few favors. When I explained what was going on, there was this pause. Then he said, "Logan, you're telling me your own mother opened credit lines in your name?" "Pretty much," I said, "or at least tried to." He sighed. "Okay, you need to start documenting everything. Every text, every call, every failed login attempt. Get printouts from your bank, too. Don't delete a single message." "I already started," I said quietly. "Good, because if she keeps this up, you'll have grounds for identity theft charges." Hearing those words, identity theft, hit me harder than I expected. It made it real. Not just family dysfunction, not bad communication, or hurt feelings. A crime. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time, just staring at my phone. I could have blocked them all right then. Could have erased every trace of them from my life. But something stopped me. Not forgiveness. Just the habit of still hoping they'd change. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls. Most from Mom, some from Jenna, and a few from an unknown number I'd bet good money was Mason borrowing someone's phone. The voicemail notifications kept coming until the box filled up. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Then came the text that broke me. It wasn't angry. It wasn't manipulative. It was simple, quiet, and cruel. "You've always been the selfish one, Logan. Even as a kid, I should have known you'd turn out like this." No punctuation. No heart emoji. Just that. I don't know what made that message sting more than all the others. Maybe because it was the one that sounded honest, not in a good way, but in a way that revealed what she'd always thought of me deep down. That I wasn't a son. I was a resource. And when that resource dried up, I became the villain. That night, I packed a small bag, just enough for a few days, and drove. No plan, no destination. Just the road and a heavy silence that made me feel like I was floating outside my own life. I ended up near the coast, hours away from everything familiar. I checked into a quiet Airbnb above a seafood restaurant. The host barely spoke English, which suited me fine. The ocean air helped clear my head. I walked along the shore until my shoes filled with sand, my phone buried deep in my jacket pocket, turned off. For the first time in weeks, I didn't hear it buzzing. It's funny how stillness hurts at first. You think you crave peace, but when you finally get it, you're forced to hear your own thoughts. All the ones you've been drowning out. I thought about growing up in that house. About the way Mom used to say, family takes care of each other. Every time I brought home a paycheck from my teenage job. About Mason wrecking my first car and Mom telling me, "It's just a car, Logan, don't make it about money." About Jenna getting a brand new MacBook for graduation while mine was fine for now. I thought about how, at 24, when Dad's hours were cut, I wired $4,000 to help them catch up on bills, and how not one person said thank you. And how, when I finally moved across the country for my job, Mom told me, "Don't forget where you came from." Like leaving was betrayal instead of survival. Somewhere between the crashing waves and the cold wind, it hit me that I'd spent my entire life auditioning for a family that never actually wanted me. At least, not unless they could get something out of it. The realization didn't feel freeing. It felt heavy, but heavy in a final way, like setting down a box you've been carrying so long you forgot what your arms felt like without it. I stayed in that small coastal town for a few days. Woke up late, walked along the docks, ate cheap clam chowder, and avoided thinking too much. I didn't tell anyone where I was. Not friends, not coworkers, not even my landlord. I needed to disappear, at least for a while. On the third night, my phone lit up while I was brushing my teeth. Unknown number again. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Logan." It was Dad. His voice sounded strained, older somehow. "Dad," I said carefully. "What's going on?" There was a long pause. "Your mother's not doing well. She says you're trying to destroy the family." I closed my eyes. "Dad, She tried to open credit cards in my name. He didn't respond. I could hear the faint buzz of the TV in the background, probably tuned to some daytime talk show Mom liked. I don't know what to say, he murmured finally. You know how she gets when she's upset. Maybe if you just apologize. Apologize? For what? For whatever she thinks you did. I almost laughed, but it came out as a choked sound. Dad, do you even hear yourself? She's breaking the law, and you're asking me to apologize. He sighed. You don't understand. She's your mother. Yeah, I said softly. And I wish that meant something. We hung up without saying goodbye. After that, something inside me went quiet. Not numb this time, but still. Like a switch had flipped. The part of me that kept reaching back, that kept hoping they'd meet me halfway, just stopped. That's when I started planning. Not revenge, not yet. Just control. The first step was protection. I called Adam again and told him I wanted to officially separate my financial identity from my family's in every way possible. He drew up some documents, got me to sign a few forms, and helped me close the last remaining shared assets my parents had access to. Next, I updated every password, switched to two-factor authentication, and froze my credit indefinitely. I even changed my phone number. It felt paranoid at first, but after everything, I wasn't taking chances. Then came the part I'd been avoiding, writing down everything. Every incident, every message, every time they'd used me or humiliated me. It started as a list, short, clinical, but as the days went by, it turned into pages, then paragraphs, then a whole document. Reading it back was surreal. Seeing it all laid out like that, years of small manipulations, guilt trips, and family favors, made it impossible to pretend it wasn't a pattern. It wasn't random. It was systematic. By the end of that week, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not for Christmas. Not for Jenna's baby shower. Not ever, maybe. I'd had enough. But walking away wasn't as clean as it sounds. The guilt still crept in sometimes. That voice in my head saying, what if they're right? What if you really are selfish? I'd sit by the window, staring out at the ocean, thinking about how much easier life would be if I could just not care. But the truth is, even when you walk away from toxic family, the emotional leash takes time to snap. On my 5th day at the coast, I got one last text before turning my phone off completely. It was from Mason. Mom says she's done trying. Don't bother coming back. No threats. No drama. Just finality. And for some reason, that hurt more than anything else. Because even though I'd already decided to walk away, hearing it from them, that they were done, made it feel like I'd been exiled from something that was supposed to be unbreakable. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there listening to the wind and the waves, thinking about how families are supposed to be a safety net. Mine had become a trap instead. Still, under all that pain, there was something else stirring. A faint ember of determination. Maybe even purpose. They thought cutting me off emotionally was punishment. They thought I'd come crawling back like always. But they'd underestimated just how much I'd already lost, and how far I was willing to go now that I had nothing left to protect but myself. I didn't know it yet, but that was the night I quietly started building the plan that would change everything. And when it was over, they'd finally understand what it felt like to lose something that couldn't be bought back. The morning after that last text from Mason, I woke up before sunrise. For once, I wasn't weighed down by dread. The coastal air felt sharper, cleaner. I watched the ocean turn gold with the light, and something inside me shifted. Maybe it was peace, maybe it was resolve, but I knew I couldn't stay frozen in that limbo between anger and guilt anymore. I drove back to Seattle that day with a single goal in mind: to rebuild, not just financially, but personally. I wanted to make my life so solid that no one could ever reach in and shake it again. When I pulled into my apartment complex, everything felt strangely new. Like I was stepping into my own life for the first time. The guilt was still there, faint and lingering, but I finally saw it for what it was, a leash they'd tied around my neck years ago. And I was done being led by it. My first move was practical. I got a new number, changed my email, replaced every card, and upgraded all my accounts to business tier security. Then I called Adam again and told him I wanted to take things further, legally, this time. He helped me draft a formal identity theft report, and I filed it with the local authorities. Not because I expected them to arrest my mom or anything. Honestly, I doubted it would even go that far, but because I wanted it documented. A line in the sand. After that, I started focusing on work again. For years, I'd been floating, good at what I did, but never really pushing myself. I'd always been too distracted by family drama, guilt, and obligations that didn't belong to me. But now I had silence, space, focus, and I didn't waste it. I'm a software consultant, not glamorous, but I'd built a decent reputation over the years helping startups with infrastructure and back-end systems. I had a small network of loyal clients and a portfolio that quietly paid my bills. But that December, I took a risk. I decided to start my own company. I named it North Node Systems, a quiet nod to the direction I wanted my life to go forward. At first, it was just me in a small co-working space downtown. But I was working like a man possessed. 12-hour days didn't feel exhausting anymore. They felt purposeful. I poured all the pain and bitterness I'd been carrying into the grind. Every late night wasn't just about success. It was about reclaiming control, about proving, if only to myself, that I could stand completely on my own. I learned everything I could about business structure, taxes, incorporation, and automation. I networked aggressively. I started taking on bigger clients, corporations that needed serious back-end support, and word spread fast. Within 6 months, I had enough contracts to hire 2 part-time developers. By month 8, we were profitable. Somewhere in the middle of that growth, I realized I wasn't thinking about my family anymore. Not in the old way, at least. I wasn't checking for texts or scrolling social media to see what Jenna posted. I didn't flinch when the holidays came and went without a single message. Instead, I spent Christmas skiing with coworkers and New Year's at a rooftop party in the city. It was weird at first, celebrating without them, but also liberating. I laughed more that winter than I had in years. And when tax season rolled around, I hired a professional accountant, a real one, not my dad's friend from church like before. When she saw the old shared records, she raised an eyebrow. "You had your family tied into this." "Not anymore," I said. She smiled. "Good. Keep it that way." By the time spring came, my company had landed a major client, a logistics firm out of Chicago. That deal changed everything. It wasn't just money, it was legitimacy. Suddenly, I wasn't some freelance guy from Seattle. I was a founder. The kind of person my family used to say I thought I was better than everyone for wanting to become. I rented a real office downtown. Glass walls, modern furniture, a big whiteboard with my goals written in permanent marker. The first day I walked in there with my small team, I couldn't stop grinning. And then, one morning, as I was leaving the office, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something in me said to answer. "Hello. Hi. This is Patricia from Evergreen Financial. I'm calling to confirm the address for your new business account." For a second, I didn't understand. "My what?" "Your business line of credit," she said. "Applied under North Node Systems." I froze. "I didn't apply for that." She hesitated. "Oh, that's strange. The application had your full name, EIN, and company information. But the listed contact number was different. Can you send me the documentation?" She did. And when I opened it, my chest went tight. The signature line said Logan Carter, but the email domain used was northnodeconsultingfamily@gmail.com. There was only one person who would think that kind of name sounded legitimate. Mom. It was almost impressive in a way. She'd found a new angle, not my personal finances this time, but my company. I'd spent months clawing my way to independence, and she was still trying to find a way to drag me back down. But instead of breaking me, it made me colder, sharper. I called Adam again, sent him the document, and he practically whistled. "She's escalating," he said. "You could sue her for damages now." "I don't want to sue her," I said quietly. "Not yet." "Then what do you want to do?" "I want her to stop thinking I'm still the same kid she can guilt into cleaning up her messes." And that's when the idea started forming. I spent the next few weeks preparing, not out of revenge, not even yet, but to protect myself and, frankly, to send a message. I opened new accounts under the company's LLC, completely separate from my personal identity. I moved my office lease into the business's name, upgraded security systems, and registered trademarks for my logo and company name. By summer, we'd expanded into a team of 8. I'd hired 2 developers full-time, a project manager, and even an intern from UW who reminded me a lot of myself. Quiet, serious, maybe a little too eager to prove himself. I started mentoring him, something I never thought I'd enjoy. But teaching someone who genuinely wanted to learn was the exact opposite of trying to please people who only took. It was refreshing. And then came the moment that really made me realize how far I'd come. It was late July, a Thursday evening, and I was sitting in my office going through invoices when I got an email with the subject line, Family Reunion 2025. It was from Jenna. I don't know what made me click it. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Inside was a flyer, a bright, pastel design advertising a summer family gathering at some rented lake house. In the fine print, I saw the words, all expenses covered by Logan. I actually laughed out loud. Not the angry kind of laugh, the genuine disbelief kind. Below the flyer was a message. Hey Logan, we figured this would be a great time to make things right. Mom says you've been doing really well, so we knew you wouldn't mind helping cover the cost. It's not much, just around $3,000 total. Let's heal as a family. They hadn't changed. Not even a little. But the difference was, this time, I had power. Real, tangible power. They couldn't touch my accounts, couldn't guilt me, couldn't manipulate me. The leash was gone. So instead of replying, I did something I'd never done before. I forwarded the email to my lawyer with a single line, add this to the file. Then I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and felt a strange calm wash over me. My life wasn't perfect. I still had scars, some emotional, some financial, but I'd built something that no one could take away. For the first time in years, I wasn't surviving. I was thriving. That summer was the best of my life. The company doubled in size. I bought my first house, a small modern place with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. Not flashy, but clean, quiet mine. I started working out, learned to cook, made new friends who didn't know or care about my family drama. And when my accountant emailed me one day with my projected earnings for the year, I stared at the number for a long time. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was what it represented. Independence. Still, I couldn't help wondering what they'd say if they saw it. If they knew the kid they'd ignored at Thanksgiving had built something real, something untouchable. But I didn't have to wonder for long. Because in late August, right after closing a major contract, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled in my mother's familiar handwriting. I stood there in my office, holding it, the air thick with that old mix of dread and curiosity. Part of me wanted to throw it straight in the trash. But another part, the part that still remembered the little boy who used to wait for her approval, wanted to know. So I opened it. Inside was a short letter. Neat handwriting. Formal. Almost cold. Logan, I heard about your business. Congratulations. I hope you'll remember who supported you through all those years of school and sacrifice. We're planning something important for the family. We'll talk soon. There was no apology. No warmth. No acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just entitlement wrapped in politeness. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and set it on my desk. That was the moment I realized this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Because if there was one thing I knew about my family, it was this. They only reached out when they wanted something. And this time, I had the feeling they wanted something big. I didn't touch the letter for 3 days. I kept it on my desk, right next to my monitor, not out of sentiment, but as a reminder. A reminder of how easy it would be to slip back into their orbit if I let emotion cloud judgment. Every time I glanced at that neat, practiced handwriting, the part of me that once wanted peace warred with the part that now demanded justice. But then something happened that made the decision for me. It started with a phone call from my accountant, a woman named Nora who had saved me more than once from my own disorganization. Logan, she said carefully, did you authorize a tax inquiry from an external party? I frowned. No. Why? Because someone tried to access your IRS records using your social security number. They claimed to be a family representative for your business. I didn't even have to ask who. I thanked her, hung up, and sat in silence. The letter, the new family event, the timing, it all fit together too neatly. Mom wasn't congratulating me. She was positioning herself. She wanted proof of success, enough to justify whatever she was planning to claim next. So, I stopped waiting to react. I started to prepare. I reached out to Adam again, this time with a different tone. I want to protect every piece of what I've built, legally, financially, and publicly. He smiled through the phone. You're ready to play chess now, not checkers. We spent the next 2 months quietly putting up walls. Every asset I owned, the house, the car, the company, was placed under an LLC and trust structure. My salary was rerouted through a management entity, so my personal income looked modest on paper. I even hired a PR consultant to polish my company's image, making North Node look like a community-driven tech firm rather than a cash machine. By October, I was practically invisible on paper. And then, by what I can only call poetic timing, my sister Jenna posted a video on Facebook. It was one of those cheerful vlogs, a montage of her new life as a mom. She'd had the baby a few months earlier, and the video showed pastel nurseries, slow-motion laughter, and, near the end, a quick clip of her mother sitting at a dining table, smiling proudly while saying, "We're so blessed, especially now that Logan's finally giving back to the family." It had over 2,000 views. I stared at the screen for a long time, the words echoing. Giving back to the family. Not only was it untrue, but it was deliberate. It painted a picture of me as the generous provider, which, I realized, they were using to justify whatever financial narrative they'd been spinning behind closed doors. So, I made a call to someone who could help me pull a different kind of lever, an old client of mine who now worked in cybersecurity for a private firm. I'll call him Nate. "Think you can trace where a certain set of loan applications came from?" I asked. He chuckled. "If you've still got the paperwork, I can find the digital footprints in a day." 2 days later, I had the report. Every fraudulent application, every fake email domain, every IP address, all leading back to my parents' home network. One of them was even timestamped during Jenna's video upload. That was it. No more hesitation. I wasn't going to press charges. Not yet. There were cleaner ways to make people like that understand consequences. So, I crafted a plan, quiet, methodical, untraceable in spirit, but legal in every sense. Step 1. I reached out to the event venue that had nearly charged me for the baby shower months before. The owner, a woman named Claire, remembered me instantly. "Oh, you're that family," she said dryly. "Your mother was persistent." I laughed. "That's one way to put it. Listen, would you mind sending me the deposit paperwork she signed last year? I need it for a legal review." She obliged. And when I looked at it, I saw exactly what I needed. Mom's full signature next to a payment authorization line that listed my name and business. That was fraud, plain and simple. Step 2. I drafted a polite letter. "Dear Mother, I recently became aware of several financial documents bearing my name without authorization. As a courtesy, I am providing you an opportunity to retract any claims, statements, or representations regarding my involvement in family finances or events. Failure to do so will result in legal escalation. Warm regards, Logan." I sent it certified mail. And because I knew how she worked, I expected exactly what happened next. Silence followed by rage. 2 weeks later, I received a text from Mason. "Nice move. Mom's furious. You think you can scare us?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because, by then, the third step was already underway. See, part of running a company means building relationships, accountants, lawyers, even journalists. So, I reached out to a small but reputable business magazine that often profiled local founders. I pitched them a story about escaping financial manipulation to build independent success. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. But I told the truth, every word of it. The article went live in late November. It was titled, "How One Man Cut Financial Ties to Survive and Thrive." It blew up. Thousands of shares, dozens of comments. And within a day, people from my hometown were connecting the dots. It wasn't hard. Same last name, same small-town roots. By the time Mom called, she wasn't even pretending to be polite. "How dare you humiliate us like this?" she hissed through the phone. "Everyone knows who you're talking about." I took a deep breath. Maybe if it didn't sound familiar, you wouldn't be so upset. "You think you're better than us," she shouted. "You think that money makes you untouchable?" "No," I said quietly. "But boundaries do." And then I hung up. That was the last time I spoke to her directly. The fallout was fast. People in town started whispering. Old friends stopped calling her for donations or favors. Jenna's little influencer channel went dark after she started getting comments like, "Guess your brother finally wised up, huh?" But I didn't celebrate. Not outwardly. Revenge, I realized, isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's quiet, like watching a tower you didn't build finally crumble under its own weight. Still, I wasn't done. The final touch came a month later. My company had grown large enough that we started a philanthropic branch, small grants for tech education and scholarships for underprivileged students. I decided to name the scholarship fund after my late grandmother, the only person in my family who ever treated me with kindness. When the press release went public, one journalist asked why I chose that name. I smiled and said, because she taught me that love doesn't come with a bill attached. That line made headlines. And when I saw the quotes circulating online, reposted by hundreds of people, tagged under hashtag NorthNode, I knew the message had reached exactly where it needed to. Not long after, I got a final envelope in the mail. No return address again, but I didn't need one. Inside was a single line written in that same elegant handwriting. You've made your point. I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and slid it into a drawer. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel guilt. I felt distance. Clean, quiet, peaceful distance. They'd spent years teaching me that family was about control and debt. But now they understood that my definition had changed, that I'd built something they could never manipulate again. And in a strange, poetic way, that was the best revenge of all. Because while they were still fighting over money, reputation, and sympathy, I'd already moved on to something they'd never have: freedom. Still, something told me this wasn't the end. People like my mother didn't disappear quietly. They regrouped, waited, planned. And deep down, I knew, sooner or later, she'd try one more move. For a few months, life was quiet, unnervingly quiet. North Node was thriving, my team was expanding, and I'd finally started to feel like the world wasn't something I needed to defend myself against. I was sleeping again, smiling again. But in the back of my mind, I knew silence wasn't peace. Not when it came from people like my mother. It was strategy. Then, in mid-March, the storm hit. It started with a voicemail from my dad. His voice was low, defeated. Logan, I don't know how to tell you this, son, but your mother's in trouble. Serious trouble. I didn't call back right away. I sat there for a few minutes, just staring at my phone, my coffee cooling in my hand. I knew it was coming. I didn't know what shape it would take, but I knew. When I finally called him back, he picked up on the first ring. She's being investigated, he said, exhaling shakily. For the credit fraud thing. Someone reported it to the state attorney's office. I went still. Someone. He hesitated. They said it came through the bank. Apparently, multiple institutions flagged her name after the applications you blocked last year. They connected the IP addresses, and his voice trailed off. They want to talk to me too. I closed my eyes. It had finally caught up to her. I hadn't pressed charges, but when I filed that fraud report, it created a trail. Banks don't ignore patterns like that. Not when it looks like systematic abuse of credit. What's going to happen? I asked quietly. He sighed. They might press charges for attempted identity theft. Maybe fines. Maybe probation. I don't know. She's falling apart. I didn't say anything. He filled the silence. She said you ruined her life, Logan. That you made her look like a criminal. I swallowed hard. Dad, she is a criminal. She used my name. My information. He didn't argue. He just sounded small. I know. There was a pause. Then, softly, she asked if you'd help. Just talk to the investigators. Maybe tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I almost laughed, but it came out hollow. After everything, she still thinks I'll save her. She's your mother, he said weakly. Yeah, I said. And I'm her son, not her safety net. When we hung up, I sat in my office and just let the weight of it all settle in. I didn't feel joy, not satisfaction, just finality. The kind that comes when something that's been rotting for years finally collapses. The next few weeks felt like watching a slow-motion car wreck. News traveled fast in our hometown. Apparently, my mother's little empire of family connections, the friends she'd always bragged about, the church committees, the charity boards, started unraveling the moment people found out she was being investigated. No one wanted to be associated with someone under a financial fraud probe. Her social circle shrank overnight. The women she'd hosted dinners for stopped calling. Even the pastor's wife, who used to call her the backbone of the community, avoided her at the grocery store. Jenna, of course, tried to control the damage. She went online, posting teary videos about forgiveness and family healing. But her followers weren't sympathetic. Most of them had seen the earlier drama, the gossip threads, the comments that connected her name to mine. Sponsors pulled out. Brand deals evaporated. Her channel went quiet. Mason took it the hardest, though. He called me once, the only time I'd heard his voice since that night at the motel. You got what you wanted? Huh, he said bitterly. I didn't want this, I said. Bull, he spat. You've been waiting for us to fall apart so you could feel like the good guy. I stayed calm. You guys did this to yourselves, Mason. I didn't tell her to lie. I didn't tell her to steal. All I did was stop cleaning up after you. He was silent for a long time. Then, quieter, she's not going to recover from this. That's not on me, I said softly. That's on her. He hung up without another word. After that, I stopped answering calls from any of them. There wasn't anything left to say. The investigation dragged on for a few months. It never became a headline. It was too small for that. But word still spread. In a town like ours, you can't hide scandal. Mom ended up taking a plea deal to avoid trial. Community service, restitution, and a record that would follow her forever. Dad called one last time to tell me. He sounded tired, older than I'd ever heard him. She wanted me to tell you she's sorry, he said. For what? He hesitated. Everything, I think. But she still says she doesn't understand why you'd go this far. I took a deep breath. Because she never understood how far she pushed me. There was a pause. Then he said, I don't think she ever thought you'd really leave. I didn't leave, I said quietly. I escaped. He didn't call again after that. That summer, I got a letter in the mail. Not handwritten this time. Typed, formal, cold. It was from my mother's attorney. This letter serves to notify you that any shared financial accounts, agreements, or familial ties involving your personal assets have been permanently dissolved by mutual consent. It was sterile, final, but at the bottom, in faint ink, there was a note, clearly typed by her, not the lawyer. I hope you're happy. I folded the letter, placed it in the same drawer as all the others, and then, for the first time, locked it. Not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted it contained. That part of my life was over. The following months were a blur of growth. North Node expanded into 2 new cities. I hired more staff, opened a mentorship program for underprivileged youth, and even started investing in small startups led by people who reminded me of myself, ambitious but undersupported. Every success felt like a quiet middle finger to the people who once told me I was selfish for wanting more. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news from back home, through mutual acquaintances or old classmates who still kept tabs on gossip. My parents had sold the family house to pay off fines. They'd moved into a smaller place outside town. Jenna's partner had left her, overwhelmed by the fallout. Mason had taken up a job at an auto shop, apparently working long hours to help Mom and Dad get back on their feet. Sometimes I'd wonder if they ever sat around that tiny new kitchen and talked about me. If they blamed me for everything that went wrong, or if, maybe, somewhere deep down, they finally realized I wasn't the villain. But even if they did, it didn't matter. Their opinions no longer had the power to shape my reality. By the time autumn came around again, 1 year after that empty Thanksgiving, I decided to take a week off and fly somewhere warm. Mexico this time. No phone calls, no emails, no obligations. Just me. On the morning of the flight, I stopped by my office to sign a few papers. When I walked in, my assistant handed me a small envelope that had arrived in the mail. No return address. But this time, I recognized the handwriting instantly. I opened it slowly, half expecting another jab, another guilt trip. But instead, there was a single line written in shaky pen. I see your grandmother's name everywhere now. You made her proud. For the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I forgave her, not because it made things right, but because, maybe for just a moment, she'd understood that all the things she tried to twist into weakness had become my strength. I didn't write back. I didn't need to. I walked out of the office, suitcase in hand, the city alive around me. For once, I wasn't running from anything. I wasn't chasing approval or fighting ghosts. I was free, completely, finally, undeniably free. And as the elevator doors closed, I thought about all the times my mother had said, family supports family. She was right, just not in the way she ever meant. Because in the end, the only person who ever truly supported me was me.